Alright, this is Ryan from Better Tattooing. Today we're going to be telling you, just kind of a response to the previous video, why you should create washes with color. Alright. Okay, now that's over with, to break down what we had said before, you should never ever do this when you're using colors. Sometimes you can. I figure you might as well put it out there because I found that people have started to reply more on the videos, the more followers that we get. And just to head some stuff off at the pass before we actually end up putting out that one video, I figured I'd make this. So, when should you actually use these washes? Now, we kind of went over it before. It's going to be use dependent, right? Like when you don't, and we can do a little, maybe we can do a little vertical list here. Don't is when you want saturated color, right? That's pretty simple. If you want something that's going to be well saturated, you shouldn't disperse it, right? Like you're not going to try to do a tribal sleeve. It's all solid black with a gray wash. Pretty simple, right? But when you do, when you want unsaturated colors, right? Now, this is, we should put like an asterisk by that. This is something that is kind of contentious, right? Like, so we're thinking, oh, watercolor tattoos are supposed to be soft, but we're not wanting something like that in a watercolor tattoo. We're using washes and stuff because we want something that's going to hold up over time, right? And the less pigment that's actually going to be in the skin, the less likely it is to hold up over years and years and years. But when can you use unsaturated color? It was a pretty short list, wasn't it? I'm just going to try to keep it simple today. When we can use unsaturated color is when it comes to, let's go ahead and just flip these colors too, hey? Blends. This is something that people kind of maybe have some trouble with, especially when you're starting out tattooing, right? And trying to meet two colors together. And you're doing an overlap like you're supposed to. You think you're doing everything right. And where they end up meeting, I'll make this a dotted line too. Where they end up meeting, what you kind of have is like one side maybe that's a little bit more, I don't know, saturated than another, right? So you have what seems like almost like a steep drop off for that transition inside of the colors where it doesn't really work very well. So this is where we'll use something like unsaturated color. Now, I'm not a fan of the pendulum / wand shade, you know. I call it wand shading because it looks like you're doing hocus pocus, but the pendulum shading techniques, for the most part, because people are trying to use it to do saturated color, and that's not really what it's there for, right? We're going to be using unsaturated color to try and blend two colors together, or two areas of different tint or value together. We're trying to not put a bunch of pigment in there, right? Like we wouldn't want to go with something that maybe is just close enough to pass, but you feel it in your gut, or you can visually see that, you know, 3-5 years down the road, that edge that you see that isn't super clean is going to become even more abrupt as stuff starts to settle, especially when you have lighter tone colors, right? Stuff that's mixed with whites. So what we'll try to do is increase the quantity of pigment that we're putting into these areas, but only gradually. We're only wanting to put a little bit in to try and maybe just even it out so that if your eyes see it and it looks super duper smooth, you can be more sure in the future that it's going to heal out effectively. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing like you do with a wash, right? If you're trying to blend two bits of grays together, that maybe have a bit of a chop mark inside of it. This works for colors or grays. I should change the name on this one. That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to take our standard pendulum motion, right? Where we see the machine moving up and down. Boy, I can't draw an arrow today. Excuse me too. It was a long night. Where we're going to be getting maximum saturation in the point, and as it lifts off the skin, there's going to be decreasing amounts. So if you're moving your hand back and forth while you're doing this, this point of saturation is going to be inconsistent throughout, right? We're going to be placing a whole bunch of dots randomly at different depths, moving back and forth, right? And you don't have to do it like this big. You're working on the back maybe, but just something small and light. You got to try to keep it random, right? You're going to be picking your hand up and down to change the elevation of the actual machine, while also changing the arc that's going on there, right? And blacks and grays will work really well. If you have a dark side, I'll change colors so it's a little bit easier to see. We have a lot of shadows in here today. It's kind of cold out. And I'm in the garage. So if we have a dark and a light side, boop, and we just have this abrupt edge that doesn't work very well, we can end up fanning off, right, with our pendulum motion, slowly adding in a dispersed black that will create a softer gradation coming off of this. Now when you do this, you're going to want to use a lower value than the one side that you're trying to blend off of, right? From this one, we would be considering it to be blended in. We're going to take that lighter value that we had used to try and mix on top of stuff and pendulum wand shade over top of it until it looks like it's nice and steady. Now, you have to be very careful with this. You don't, machine speed doesn't really matter to me when you're doing this, because if it's running really slow, your hand should be moving slower, right? If it's moving super fast, your hand should be moving fast. So it's just like common sense. You may have to play around with it to try and figure out how it's going to work. But when you first start, always start with the lighter washes trying to blend in. Maybe slow down your hand speed and just see how things work up. Before just jumping right into the center of the tattoo, you're going to try to start in a less, wherever there's going to be less focus, further away from a focal point. Let's say you really want someone to look over here. I'll start with my blends up here, as far away from it as possible. I won't go through the whole thing while I'm trying to figure out how that skin is going to react to this type of technique, or how strong the values are going to be when I'm actually laying it into the skin by just going over top of it. Because what can happen is you'll start scooting that mix over, creating something that's darker, and then you're going to have to change all of the values inside of your piece to get it to look right. And if you've already gone a little bit too dark to begin with, it's not going to work, right? So stick super light, stick in a corner, do a test, get your hand motion right before you approach the rest of the actual tattoo. Now, with colors, we'll do the same thing. If we have two tones we're trying to blend, maybe this is going to be a dark color and a lighter color, tone-wise or other, we're going to always try to take the lighter tone and go back over top of it. There's two reasons why. Right? One is more than likely going to be tinted with white. And in the previous video, we talked about how this is just not going to have a lot of strong staying power, you know, at length, which we can use to our benefit when we're doing something like this, because we know it's just going to fall out, maybe blend in a little bit. It's just going to not really work or stay as strong as long. We're going to be trying to take the actual color pigments particles that are apparent in these you know, washes and slowly put them in. Now, it may look like maybe it's a little bit lighter or brighter when you first initially do it, but once it heals about 4 to 8 weeks out, you're going to see that lightness calm down, and it'll actually look like there's a better blend there. So don't trust your eyes totally. You want to make it maybe a little bit light when you're going into it, and it'll settle, because all you're trusting is that those one particles of whatever purple or blue or orange or green are going to be in there in such a disbursement that you can create a soft blend. Now, you can do this the opposite way as well when you do it with the darks, but that's only going to be if you have maybe just some soft spotty areas where we don't see full blends inside of stuff, right? Just with a chop and stuff, if you're using a flat, you'll see this happen a lot as well. We'll take our dark colors or dark tones of whatever we're doing, and we're going to do the exact same as we would do if we were doing a black and gray piece, right? Just one shade over top of them, very gently, and you'll see them start to blend in. Easy peasy. So, yeah, you can use color washes. Washes just in general. Maybe we should change the title list. I don't know. Anyways, probably picking on it too much. This is a great way that you can try to just improve that smoothness, right? When you're doing this, it's called building values, right? So let's try to build values. Take your time. Don't overwork the skin. If you see it start to bleed or even push up excess amounts of exudate in between each time that you're doing one of these, stop. Let the skin cool down, grab a cold rag, lay it over top of it, and take a look. If you're seeing the pores open up, or if you're seeing the actual top layer of the skin, the epidermis, kind of breaking apart or maybe missing a little bit in spots where the color or shades that you have look super, super vibrant, stop. Let the tattoo heal up, and then come back in at another time. That's it. This is Ryan from Better Tattooing, signing off.